Morning. This video is going to be shorter than most because, well, I have a time limit. But I just wanted to get a few things out there while I have a chance, because I have appointments and my nephew's coming. Well, he's 2, so he needs my full attention. Midnight! Come here! Come here! My puppy is back from surgery. Unfortunately, she's wearing the cone of shame. Midnight! And she's still not used to it. Lay down. It's so big on her, as you can see. My poor puppy. I know. I know. I know. She's a really mellow, mild-mannered dog. So, unfortunately, she's got to keep this cone on for about 2 weeks, and I know she doesn't like it. And she runs into everything, so in case you hear banging like that, it's her trying to navigate with the cone. Midnight! Midnight, honey! No. Come on. Lay down. Lay down. Down. Okay. You're a good girl. Sleepies. You're alright. So. Today, we are going to talk about personal distortion. I do not believe YouTube is out to get me. However, I did something different during my last video, and I got emails out the wazoo from the company. Flag. Why? One, I'm not allowed to talk about the E word that's coming up in November. I'm even afraid that that's going to flag it, because, I mean, if you guys can figure it out, so can the AI. I mean, I was accused of being for one side or the other, and then it was, what agency do you follow? You need to tell us, what agency do you follow? And it's like, I don't. I was just talking. And then I show some clips, because it's supposed to be about Polly Likens Jr. and his family, and, you know, what they endured and what they've been trying to tell people. So I share some clips. It's not just me talking this whole time. It's 90% them. And, you know, their struggles and, you know, literally, you know, videos over the past couple months, since Polly's murder. And, because during the vigil, the father was playing some more like church type music, and some rap music, copyright. And I'm like, are you serious? I didn't tag that music. That music is playing because the father is playing a boombox in the background. You don't see him getting yelled at by the police to turn off your music, copyright. Oh, my goodness. Like, I don't even profit from these videos. I don't understand. You know, I can understand if I was making money from these videos, but I'm not. I'm not making squat, actually. And these videos are very personalized, and they're just the truth coming out. So here comes personal distortion going, wow, I can't say anything these days without getting squashed all the time. And I don't think any red or blue side, I can't even say the words. I'm afraid I'm going to get flagged. I'm afraid I'm going to get flagged for saying the word flagged. You know, they don't have a problem with me talking, but they have a problem with me showing clips, or, you know, if any music accidentally plays in the background. There used to be a story that would go around when I was younger. Kids would say, you know, if you make a porn video, make sure you play Disney music in the background, because they will follow. They will find you, and they will shut down that video faster than anything. So in case somebody decides they're going to put it out on the internet. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do know that, I'm afraid to even say the word Disney. They're scary. When my sister went to college, they actually have an entire class dedicated to their copyrights, because they don't own just the nice little castles in Florida and California, and all the cartoon characters that they make. I mean, They own Fox. If you actually look them up, they own a lot. So they're not to be trifled with. So anybody who's going for a major, for a bachelor or master's or a doctorate in communications, you are usually taking a class referring to them, like what they own, what you can't walk on, because they will come and get you. Like I said, even saying the word here is like the black helicopters. I'm trying not to be as personal and paranoid. But honestly, a lot of people are these days, and they have a right to. And this is exactly why. You know, we have our freedoms of speech, and I used to be one of those people who was like, okay, yes, you have freedom of speech, but there's consequences to the things you say. You can't just say, I'm going to kill somebody, because you're going to go to jail for that. Or you are going to face fines or protection orders if you say that out loud and somebody decides, you know what, I think that's directed towards me. So you have to be careful of what you say. And, you know, even when I'm afraid to say the C word for the virus that came through a few years ago. If I say that, maybe that's going to be a political thing. Oh no, is it the word political? Crap. Anyway, this is what I've been thinking about for the last day and a half. Ever since I put up that video and I got those emails and I got the flags. And I was like, what? What? But it wasn't. So if you guys want to see it, it's the video before this one. Man, I'll get flagged for saying that. Watch. Anyway, so personal distortion is when you take something and you distort it to fit your narrative. And okay, I'll give you an example. My stepson does this trick a lot. So his therapist challenges him a lot. During our last session, we were discussing his mother's abuse. And his therapist said, let's talk about an incident where your mother abused you. And he said, okay, let's talk about the time where mom said that I was the reason she got fired. And he goes, okay, walk me through it. And he says, well, she comes home and she busts in the door. He's like, no. He's like, let's back up. Where are you before she gets home? He's like, I'm on the couch eating some Doritos. And he's like, okay. So now what happens? Well, she kicks in the door. Well, didn't you like hear her pull up? You know, how did you know that it was her? And you know, here's where my stepson starts to get irritated. You can see it in his face. You can hear it in the tone of his voice. He feels like he's personally distorting. The therapist is trying to challenge his way of thinking to get him to understand that he was a kid and whatever he did, his mom probably deserved it. And I hate saying that because, you know, there are some kids out there that hurt their parents. And a lot of people will say that. They'll say, well, maybe you deserved it. Maybe it's your fault. It is not your fault 9 times out of 10. These are very particular circumstances. And in this case, mom was constantly abusing him. So he said that she kicked in the door. And once again, he said, how'd you know she kicked in the door? Maybe she pushed it. Maybe she punched it. He goes, well, I heard a bang. Okay, then. So then what happens? Well, she's on the phone. And it's okay. He's like, she's on the phone with her boss. And he said, well, how do you even know that? Well, she told me so later when she apologized to me. He said, okay. So then what happens? He's like, well, she starts coming in and yelling at me. And he wants to know, well, what was she yelling at you? Well, she was calling me names. What kind of names? Now, I'm seeing, I know what my stepson is doing. I know this therapist knows what my stepson is doing. However, I also understand what the therapist is trying to do. My stepson becomes personally distorted when people start to question him. He believes in his head the reason why they're questioning him is they're calling him a liar. That they're saying that he wasn't in as bad a situation as he's making it seem to be. Really, the therapist is trying to get him, again, to understand that if he walks through it, He might have, been a little kid and being a little defiant because mom scared the bejesus out of him, but he's not the reason why mom got fired from her job. And he's trying to break it down into little pieces. And usually, if you have a bad day and you walk through each and every little step and you try to go, where is this that it's my fault? Where is it that I could have done something different? A lot of people will go the whole, well, I wouldn't have done anything different. I did everything I could. And maybe we shouldn't go back, and maybe we shouldn't look at that, and maybe we shouldn't, because as I've said before, you can't undo it. Yes, I know that. However, it's important to realize it for future events so you don't feel like weighed down by that one. So, especially if it's one that gets brought up a lot. A lot of families will have an incident where they'll bring up that incident over and over and over. And it's a manipulation tactic, actually. They use it to make the other person feel bad. So they'll do what they want. And in my stepson's case, his mother did that all the time. She did the same thing to my stepdaughter. To my eldest stepson. If she was having a bad day and she wanted them to do something, or she was mad at them, she would justify it by saying, well, 5 years ago, you did this. And then 2 years ago, you did this. And then 3 months ago, you did this. And now today, I'm mad because you did all those things for the last 5 years. So you owe me in some sense. And it was like, what? She would do that little dance all the time. And he would have to hear it all the time about what he did wrong. I hear it personally from my own family. They still do this thing where they go, ha ha ha, you locked yourself in your room in your teenage years. Yeah, I did, because I felt safe in there. I didn't want to come out. Ironically, my mother is remembering how that feels because my sister's moved back in with her. And now she's saying, I feel very on edge. I don't feel like I can come out of my room because she snaps at me for everything. I said, oh, really? Because that's how I felt. She's like, well, I got to get out of here. I can't be in this house with her. Because my sister right now her anxiety is really up. And when her anxiety is really up, she starts to snap at everything. And she'll assume that everybody's attacking her. So, every little thing is bad. Such as, my nephew got outside yesterday. He's, again, 2 years old. My sister wasn't paying attention. I was getting mad, actually, and my mom was complaining to me about it. And I said, this is why babies drown in bathtubs while their moms are on the phone. So my mom, and I know she's done wrong in my life. That doesn't mean that they can't change. She's probably never going to change, but I don't have to live with her either. She's got to live with my sister now. But in the environment that we were in before, it was a mixture for disaster. And I think that combination is what ultimately caused most of our pain. In this case, the same situation even happened with my stepson. But anyway, my mom, my nephew's fine. My mother felt a breeze through the house. And then she went over and she realized the door was wide open. There's the baby out the door. My mom's scooping him up, bringing him back in. She looked at my sister and goes, your son was outside. And my sister goes, and he's back in now. What do you want me to do about it? Most of the time, in my case, if my mother was bringing my child back to me, I'd be like, oh my God, it could have died. I would have been like trying to figure out how to make sure that didn't happen again. My sister was like, pfft. So I'm going to get him today. Sometimes I think about filing for custody for my nephew. I really do. Just because of the situation. It scares me. It's not that I don't think my sister is a good parent. She has very hard times prioritizing. He's not number one. And that's the issue. Technically parents should put themselves, because if they're not functional, they're not going to be able to function for their children. However, in certain situations, like, feeding them, they should be number one. You should be, making sure that they have their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My sister is instead nitpicking at everything that my mom feeds him and then complaining that she has to feed him at all. My sister doesn't starve him, but she takes advantage of the fact that my mom is there to do it for her. But then she criticizes my mom in every single way about what she's doing. It's interesting because my mom was saying, it wasn't this bad before. Was I this bad? Was I this bad? She keeps asking me this. Was I this bad? And I'm very hesitant to really tell her, yeah, you were. You really were. Because this is probably why she learned this behavior, is because she watched you. And she's never learned from it. She only knows what she was taught, and that's it. And I look at my stepchildren, and I think the same thing. My stepson, my youngest stepson, in the end, when he was dancing around his questions, and he got mad, and he yelled at the therapist. And I said to him, hey, the therapist is not attacking you, hon. Well, it feels like he is. And I'm like, he's not. He's just trying to figure out what happened. We can't figure out what happened without all the details. We need the details. If you don't have them, you don't have them. Don't make them up. But, just walk us through. There's no judgment. There's no, we're going to punish you for anything you did. And then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I think he did do something. I think he believes that he got her fired. And then she distorted that to fit that, making him believe that forever after that. I believe, based on his answers and the way, because he never was able to tell us why or when she said, you got me fired. In his entire narrative, it's she yells at him, she puts him in his room, and then she apologizes. And it's like, well, where's the part where you got her fired? My stepson has a problem with taking personal responsibility. That one drives him bonkers. The idea of taking responsibility is the same as his mom. She couldn't do it. It was never her fault. Everything was never her fault. I even had to deal with her this way, where I would have to actually approach her almost like hands up. You know how they say, like, when you see a police officer, put your hands up to make sure that they know that you're not armed, so they don't hurt you. Terrible, but true. I had to approach that with her because I wouldn't hear from her for months. And then all of a sudden, she would send me, like, I remember the last time I ever got messages from her. I was painting my daughter's room, and I heard ding, 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 ding from my phone, as in, notifications. And I was like, that's either Rite Aid or it's Catherine. And I pick up my phone, I'm like, it's Catherine. Oh no. Just, now it's like, now I got to read through all these books. I mean, it's not even one big text. I mean, I send the book text too, and I know they're annoying, but I'd rather get a book text than, a bunch of little ones. In her case, she sends like 5 book texts, and now I got to catch up to that, and she's still texting me, and it's like, hold on, let me catch up to what you're talking about. And it starts with, she was in the hospital, where's her daughter, what's going on with her, why isn't she messaging her? And it's like, Catherine, you called her a bitch and told her that you never wanted to see her again. Well, I don't remember that. And I was like, okay, well, but you did say that. So she's like, well, if I called her that, then she must have been being that way. So she better stop acting like a bitch, and maybe I won't call her a bitch. And I was like, But that's how I would have to go, Catherine, what's wrong? Are you okay today? Is it all right? Because to me it was, why is she blowing me up after 3 months? I mean, the last time I spoke with her was in January, where she got mad that her daughter even called her. And her daughter was crying. she had her on speaker, so I heard the whole thing. And she tried to call her on Christmas. So this is actually 5 days later, actually, and that New Year's Eve. She's calling her, and goodness, morning stuff. So she's calling her on Christmas. She's calling her. She's not answering, and their mom, she died of cancer, like I said, and we knew it metastasized by this point. So, she's trying to call her on Christmas to say, Merry Christmas, Mom, how's things? And she's not answering. And so New Year's Eve, she calls. She puts her on speaker this time, so I hear her, and she goes, hello, and my stepdaughter just like bursts into tears, and she's just, oh, I was so worried about you. And her mom goes, why? You don't care about me. And she goes, what? Yes, I do. I tried to call you on Christmas. You didn't answer me. And she said, yeah, because you wanted stuff. I don't want anything from you. Why are you calling me? And she goes, what? But I didn't hear from you. I was worried. She goes, oh, so you're not. Because you're a bitch. And I don't like dealing with little bitches like you. And if you want to be a bitch, you can't call me anymore. Because you blow up my phone and you harass me. And then you tormented me in Thanksgiving. And then you called me in October. And you called me last March. And this is harassment. My stepdaughter was 15 years old. Like, calling her mom. And this is the response she gets. And she tells, her final thing is to her saying that she's worthless to her and she never wants to see her and don't come to her funeral. And she hangs up on her. And of course my stepdaughter is like completely destroyed. For the entire year that this woman had cancer, I had a specialist trauma therapist who has since passed away. Was a great therapist too. Jillian Miller was so great. But she would say to me, I can only throw the life jacket at her so many times. And then in that moment, again, when we knew it metastasized, and that was stage 4, it was just a matter of time. So the therapist said, all right, she wanted so badly for some reconciliation between the two of them. We all did. And we never got that. Mom was not willing to do it. She felt like she didn't have to do that. That she was not obligated to do anything. Everybody was obligated to her. It was sad. So then the therapist and I said, the therapist said to me, and I agreed with her, was, now we have to prepare her for Mom's death. And so that way she doesn't blame herself because she's going to do it. And she did. Of course she did. It's her mom. She barely had any time with her mom at all. And it still killed her when her mom died. Oh, that was awful too. The person who ended up telling us when she died was the same one who stole all my stepson's money, who I had to take to court, who stole the ashes, who stole the little girl. She had my phone number. She was supposed to call me. I get in the shower. I have my phone with me, so it's not like she tried to call me first and I missed the call. She calls my stepdaughter, and she goes, hey, your mom just died. I literally hear my stepdaughter running up the stairs to the bathroom. And this house is old, so when you hear things, and it's like the whole house is shaking, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then she literally body slams into the bathroom door where I'm at, and I can hear her screaming, and I'm like, what the fuck? And so, I'm jumping out of the shower, still soaping my hair, and I got a towel on, and I'm opening the door, and she's just on the floor, just completely sobbing, and her phone's next to her, it's still on, and it's this Amanda person. And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hello? Well, I just told her mom died. She needed to know. I was like, are you fucking for real? Did you just call a 15-year-old and just willy-nilly her mom's death? Bitch. I can't even with these people. It's like, do you guys have any hearts at all? Like, ugh. Yeah, let's rip the Band-Aid off a 15-year-old and see how that goes. With a mother who disowned her practically her whole life. Now you're gonna just, oh yeah, she's dead. Oh, and then she invited her to come see her body. And of course my stepdaughter is like completely like, blah. And she's screaming and begging and wanting to go see the body. And I was like, I wanted to say no. It was like, oh my God. But then I didn't. I took my stepdaughter to see her before she died. She was very babyish at that point. I was lied to and told that she was in a coma. When I get there, she's sitting up and talking. But she was incoherent. Some of the things she said didn't make a lot of sense. I knew the tumor had moved to her brain. And I sat with her and I even held her hand. And, you know, I actually told her, and I have no regrets of saying this, I said, I wish it was Cindy in this bed instead of you. Because honestly, if I have to pick between the two of them, Catherine was bad, but Cindy was worse. So much worse. And I told her I was sorry. Honestly, I didn't know a lot of the things that she'd already done to my stepson. I knew bits and pieces from what I had experienced with her, but I didn't know the full extent until after my stepson came to live with me and his therapist broke everything to me. And it was like, whoa, I stopped crying over her after that. Because I pitied her. You know, I kept thinking, you know, she's had a lot of trauma in her life and she didn't want to face it. And the consequences, she took it out on her children. And that's the problem with, you know, that's the difference between a parent taking care of themselves first and, you know, with therapy, you do need to take care of yourself first, your mental state. You can't take care of a child if your mental state is wonky. Now, I'm not saying like you're a bad parent if you have mental illness. Absolutely not. I have mental illness. But I see therapists, I see my psychiatrist, and I get treatment for it. I would never call myself a bad parent. I wasn't perfect. Absolutely not. I have made tons of mistakes, and I've lost a lot in my life. But those who fight it, who are in her state, where it's personal distortions to the extreme, where she feels everybody is out to get her. I mean, I couldn't say one thing to challenge her. If I said one thing to challenge her, she would act like I was out to get her. And she would yell at me. And so again, I had to approach her. Hands up, I'm not a threat. And when she would yell at me, I wouldn't yell back. I would just talk. Be like, I'm sorry that you're feeling this way, Catherine. I'm sorry that you're going through this way, Catherine. And that was the only way I could deal with her. I was also doing this not only to appease her, but I felt at the time that if I kept her calm, she wouldn't hurt my stepson. Because I knew that when her anxiety was really high, she was more likely to hurt him. And obviously the courts and nobody else was listening. So my only option at the time was to try and keep her calm enough that she wouldn't take it out on him. And again, later I learned it didn't matter. She still did it anyway. And she wouldn't seek treatment. Ever. And, you know, I even tried to suggest a few times to her, like, hey, you know, maybe you should do this, not for you, but for the kids. Like, I wouldn't try and say, like, that a therapist would actually do the same thing with her. They would try and suggest, you know, let's get this therapist in the house so we can help manage the children. Because she was all for that. You know, like, oh, yeah, you take care of it. You fix this. You make them, you know, compliant. Obviously, no therapist can make a child compliant because children aren't normally compliant. So, it's crazy. When when I go back in my past, I'm going to spend the last bits of this jumping backwards, and I'm trying to cover the 8th and 9th grade. During my 8th and 9th grade, my parents were the most volatile. I mean, they had their troubles, and he dislocated her elbow when I was like 6 or 7, and beat her up throughout the years. But my most vivid memories beyond that are in my final years of high school. We had the cops at our house almost every week, and half the time I was the one calling them. My dad was having affairs. Actually, he had one in Akron with a stripper. And one day I got home from school, and there was only one computer in the house, and I sit down in it, and my mom was so enraged. So enraged. She wasn't thinking. Not that this excuses it. It absolutely doesn't. I mean, looking back, she probably should have went to jail. But she was so mad, she wanted somebody else to feel that anger with her. So what she did was, while I'm sitting on the computer, she pushes the chair away and she takes the mouse and she goes, "Your father's having an affair. Here, look." And she pulls up this girl's porn page. I mean, I was in 8th grade. 8th grade! And look at her here. I'm trying to do this. I don't see shit. Are you serious? What are you showing me? But she was trying to make me hate my father because she was mad. And I understand that, but you don't put that on your children. Catherine did this a lot. So, when Catherine would act out, it was almost like reliving with my own mom. But I would, approach it almost kind of the same way, where I was just like, "I'm not a threat. Please don't attack me." And I would try and stay out of the way, and I would hide. And, because no one would listen. I mean, literally, I go to school, and I go to the guidance counselor almost every other day. Literally telling them everything that's going on. I'm telling them about court cases. I'm being dragged in as a witness for a protection order. My mom's going and getting one almost every time. I swear she got 10. And then what she would do is she would twist the craps. She would call my father until my father called her back. And this is the problem with protection orders. And the moment he called her back, she'd call the police. He violated the order. And technically, that's how the orders work. Even the one I have for my safety. When the judge granted it, he looked at the young man and he told him, "Sir, I need you to do something for me. I need you to answer a scenario because I need you to understand how important these things are." He goes, "You're walking down," he said Hermitage at first, and he said, "Scratch that. Hermitage doesn't have sidewalks. You're walking down Sharon and you see, my stepdaughter, and she doesn't see you yet. What do?" And he goes, "Walk away." And the judge goes, "No, you run. You run. Because she's not going to get in trouble. You are." And that's true. Sometimes I wish the orders were kind of both ways. Because they're there to protect, but so many people will distort them just to have them to hurt the other person. This is the bad people taking advantage of the laws. They know what to say, they know what to do, and they know how to act. And as long as they put on that little performance, and they tell their lies, and they're also confident about it because sometimes they really believe their lies, and other times they just have no conscience. So it doesn't bother them to lie on the stand. I'm just kind of looking at them like, what? I'm in shock. They can sit there and do that with a straight face and even smile sometimes. And it's like, are you for real? But they are not both ways. And therefore, my mom, like I said, she would call my father until he called back, and then she called the police. And my dad kept getting thrown back in jail and getting fines. This was her way of trying to control him. She didn't want him, but at the same time, she didn't want him with anybody else. She just wanted him to do what she wanted to do. This was a form of control. And my father's response was violence. She would push him till he popped. Not saying that what he did was right either. It was absolutely 100% wrong. But she was half and half with it. And I'd go to school and I'd say, oh, we're here for this protection order. Oh, we're here for this custody order. Oh, my mom wants me to testify to this. Oh, and these things are happening with the business, and my mom's going to college, and my dad did some of the work so she could get her degree, or so he says. And I remember the guidance counselor actually looking at me and going, why do you know all this? I was a little confused. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean, why do I know all this? Because this is what's happening. She's like, yeah, but you shouldn't know this at your age. I don't know, because I do. Didn't really know how to respond to that, because I'm a kid, and this is what I know. So comes back to that whole, if this is your reality, this is your reality. You don't know anything else. You don't know that it's wrong. You don't know that this is not the way normal families are supposed to function, because this is all you know. And that's all I knew. So when I finished my 8th grade, I swear we had the cops there like 6 times, even once during the summertime. I remember my father being gone for a minute, and I couldn't figure out, where he went. And next thing you know, he's in our house, and I remember him screaming. I remember her screaming. I remember banging and smashing. And, it was one of those classic, if you hear the parents going on, you hide at the top of the stairs at the banister, and you're trying to look down the bars like, what's going on? But I don't want to get involved, because then I'm going to get hurt. But I heard her screaming, and she was yelling for us, me and my siblings, to go out to the car. And so, I grabbed my little brother, who's, 8 years younger than me, so he's little. And then my other younger brother and sister, who aren't that, much younger than me, but young enough. And I'm getting them all in the car. My mom's getting in the car. My father is acting like he's drunk. And I see him. He doesn't even have any shoes on. And I was like, what is he doing? And he comes over, and my sister's in the front seat. I'm in the back. I actually had my cell phone. And this is back before child locks were really a thing. And it didn't matter. It was the front seat anyway. Child locks don't really happen with front seat doors. But he opens the door, and he's grabbing my sister. And he's trying to pull her out of the car. And my mom's screaming. She's grabbing my sister, and she's trying to back up. And then my mom put it in reverse real quick, and she hit the gas. And the side view mirror hit him. I mean, he's going this way. Here's the side view mirror. So when it hit him, it hit his shoulder right here. And he spun around. I actually thought she ran him over. And so, I was already dialing 911 at this point. And I'm screaming at the operator, she hit my dad with the car. She hit my dad with the car. And the operator's like, what? And she's like so confused. Who is this? Where are you at? And I'm giving her the address. And my dad literally threw himself down on the ground. He looked like he was dead. It scared me. Like, what'd you do? And my mom stops. She doesn't even leave. Because she doesn't know what to do. She grabs the phone actually away from me. And she goes, he just left a mental health facility, and he came up here and attacked me and tried to drag my daughter out of the car. I did not drive over him with the vehicle. She's trying to save herself at this point. And honestly, she didn't drive over him. He did get hit with the side mirror. It was just, I felt the bumps. What it was we lived on a hill, so whenever you drove backwards, you were going to literally drive off a little hump. So it wasn't him, it was the hump. Next thing you know, he's still late. He's still laying there. We have cops pulling in the driveway. We have 4 or 5 of them coming down. And they're literally jumping out of their cars and running at my dad. One of them actually jumps on him, and then my dad moves. And he immediately starts to fight the cops because they're trying to cuff him. And he's a big dude. I guess I've never showed you guys my father. He's dead now. But this is him. So this is actually his urn. But this was him. He honestly hadn't changed very much between those time frames. So that's his urn up there. That's a bear made out of his sweater. He's been gone since 2013. So I have his ashes. I'm gonna cry. I don't want to cry. Now I got 10 more minutes of this. So, you know, I'm still going back into the guidance office. I'm still explaining them what's happening at home. So, you know, I have these troubles at school that I've been explaining, and now I have these troubles at home. I don't want the 2 to cross. And so I almost compartmentalize the situations. This is home, this is school. I would share a little bit of the home stuff with the few friends I had and the guidance counselor, because she never called child services. She should have. I mean, I gave her all of this. I gave her the physical abuse. I gave her the mental, the emotional, and the neglect. I had shared with her that my mom had shown me this porn page. And, dear Lord, nope. So, nobody called, nobody did anything. So that was home life, you know, for the next few years. And it really was. Cops all the time. I got to learn their names. Officer Brown, Officer Moses. Moses is retired. Ristave. At one point, you know, in my life, I had run into a Ristave, and he said to me, he didn't like my father. And it's like, okay. In fact, he actually suggested that I make an accusation against my father. He said, you know, if you tell me something he did to you, I can go and arrest him. And I'm like, what? He was almost trying to insinuate that I should lie, because at the time that he was asking me to do this, my father hadn't done anything. He hadn't hit me in a long time. And he's never inappropriately touched me. Nothing like that. Ever. My mom used to try and do that. She used to try and say, oh, did your father ever touch you? And it's like, no. Ew. Actually, my father was very against anything I wore. If I wore anything even slightly skimpish. I mean, if I wore even a skirt that was just like at my knees, forget it. No, he was like, change now. So, you know, even in summertime, I'm wearing sweaters. This is what I'm used to doing since I was younger. You know, people kind of pick at me a little bit, even in my adult years, going, why are you wearing a sweater in 80-degree weather? Leave me alone, man. People think I'm hiding bruises or something. I actually got asked that by a detective in my later years, where I had to talk to them about something. And I'll eventually get into that, I promise. But I was explaining to him an incident where I did get hurt, and I was hurt. And he said to me, is that why you wear sweaters to the soccer game? And I was like, what? Like, no. Like, I was so confused. Like, I guess he was one of the coaches for my kids' soccer games, and I guess he had noticed that I always wore sweaters to the soccer games. Honestly, it was a very shady area, and I thought it was cold, and I didn't see the problem with wearing a sweater. To me, you know, fashion wasn't a thing. It was about comfort. I didn't care if it wasn't in season. My mom used to do that. You can't wear velvet during the summertime. That is a winter only thing. And I'm like, I am going to wear velvet whenever I please. Because sometimes I liked velvet. I had this velvet dark blue shirt. It was like almost a turtleneck, but it was short sleeved. I love that shirt. I don't even know where that shirt is anymore. I know I've grown out of it. But, so this was, you know, home life. This hiding in my room. not wanting to deal with anybody anymore. Played my video games. I was on my forums. I did artwork for people. I made what they used to call chibis. There was a website that used to make like what we would call skins, like dolls. We would call them chibi dolls. And they were cute little pudgy faced dolls that you basically took the doll and then you drew your own, artwork on it to make it look like it was wearing something. So it was literally like a naked doll, like a Barbie doll, and you are drawing the clothes on it. And I did this a lot. I loved doing that. I loved doing pixelated art. It took forever because it was literally like you zoomed in all the way and you're like dot, 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 because it's got to match the other side. And making the ruffles could be difficult because they have to be, in a certain diagonal pattern, because this is very, you can't get any smaller than pixels when you're doing artwork. I'm sure you can, but I really haven't seen it done even in like in Photoshop. So I'm dealing with this at home, and I'm doing the whole I'm not a threat thing. But I perceived a lot of things also, like I couldn't talk about them anymore. I would tell these therapists this stuff all the time, and they would act like, well, they were shocked, but then they didn't do anything about it. So it was weird. And it was like, should I even, like, I started to question whether I should even tell anybody anything. Like, is it worth it? Am I wasting their time? I don't understand. I feel like I need to vent because I'm a teenager and I'm really going through these things. But nobody is having the reaction that I thought they would. So I started to think, maybe what I was going through wasn't so bad. And I mean, comparably to other people and their serious tragedies, absolutely. Their tragedies were far more, worse than mine. And there became, more of the whole be quiet. I actually got that a lot from my dad's mother, my grandmother. She would always tell me, stop telling people what goes on in the house. That should stay in the house. You guys ever hear that phrase, what goes on here stays here? Yeah, that's a bad phrase. I got told that a lot. I was told I was embarrassing the family by telling them about, what my parents were doing. Now that I'm almost 40 and she can't shut me up, she cries about it and says, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known. It's like, are you serious? I told you. I told her in particular about it. But it was her son, and don't talk badly about my son. I'm your granddaughter. What? What the? And then she would blame my mom. Well, she literally told me once, maybe if your mom would sleep with your dad more. I'm a child. One, I don't need to know that crap. And second of all, that has nothing to do with it. My father shouldn't have to have sex in order to not beat my mom. This is ridiculous. It was constantly trying to talk to somebody. And actually, the only person I could talk to was my aunt. And you know what happened in 2003? She died. And I was like, God, I feel like everybody's out to get me. I'm going to cry. She was my dad's sister. She had an aneurysm and she died in her early 30s. She had a son who actually has a lot of mental issues, not because of the family, but because she took seizure medication, namely Depakote. And if anybody knows about that medication, it has a lot of side effects, usually physical deformities if you're pregnant. And in her case, he's like my age, but up here, he's 10. He will throw man-sized temper tantrums, and he lives in a facility. He will always live in that facility. He will never get better. He's lucky he doesn't have any physical deformities, no cleft lip, no missing an arm, blindness, anything like that. He looks like he has Down syndrome. Some people try and say, well, he has Down syndrome, he's autistic. He's none of those things. He has a disability because of side effect due to medications she was taking while she was pregnant because she had seizures. And she couldn't stop taking the medication, or she would have had seizures and died anyway. And actually, Child Services took her son away because she had, quote, mental illness. And it was like, excuse me? She was fully functional. She did have some mental illness because she had suffered hypoxia as a little girl. She'd actually gone to the dentist, and they overdid the medication, and her heart stopped beating. And, of course, oxygen deprived from the brain can cause hypoxia. And so she had some brain damage, and it led to the seizures subsequently, and she had to take the medication. But she was not capable of raising a child or taking care of a home. In fact, she actually had her own apartment, but Child Services came in and they took her son away. And she didn't even do anything. Like, she loved her son. She actually went, they took her son away. They put him in foster care up in Erie, which is an hour and a half away. She went and lived in a homeless shelter just so she could be close to him, so she could visit. That's awful. I always felt bad for her, because it was one of those situations where Child Services should be at my house and not her house. But they're at her house and they're taking away her baby. So I'm going to end it here. Like I said, this video is going to be shorter than most because I have a time limit and my time is up. So I have to hop on this other thing. But I appreciate you all taking the time. If you have some time, check out that last video. Please. It's not like this one where I'm just talking for 50 minutes. It is literally about Polly Likens Jr. He was 14 years old, and he was murdered and dismembered, and the whole public made it all about how he looked. They tried to call him transgender just because he has feminine features, and he was never transgender. He was a gay male, and actually that's become a huge controversy around here. And his family, who knew him best, who raised him, who loved him, who took care of him, they have been saying from day one he was not transgender. And the entire world, it feels like, just trying to look at him and say, well, he's got this curly hair and he looks feminine. He must be a girl. He is not a girl. And the family wouldn't even care if everybody else wasn't attacking them for calling him a boy. That's ridiculous. Why are you attacking them? They're his family. A complete flippin' stranger killed him, cut him into little pieces, and dumped his body all over the river, and the family was lied to, found out through social media when his body was identified. I mean, everything that could have went wrong. And the public still is like covering their butts. I mean, some of the newscasts are starting to like twist around going, okay, he's just a teenager that got killed. Yeah, fine. Just say that. If you wanted to say that Polly had feminine features or didn't care about the pronouns because he really didn't, fine. They didn't care. A lot of people were like, well, you think he's a girl? That was actually when he first went missing. That's what everybody cared about. Is he a girl or is he a boy? And then everyone would get mad and be like, who cares? He's a teenager that's missing. Technically, yes, he is a teenager that's missing. Who gives a shit what he is? He's missing. Go find him. It doesn't matter. But then it became an argument about transgenders, and it was like, he's not even transgender. Why is this an argument? But people made an argument because of how he looked. I mean, how hypocritical can you get? I mean, the whole basis behind the LGBTQ is so not to judge a person by how they look. You're not supposed to judge them at all. You are supposed to accept them who they are. But they themselves, unfortunately, a lot of, especially the transgender community, and I hate that because I know so many and they're great, and they actually aren't part of this. I shouldn't even say the whole thing. But a lot of people are judging Polly based on how he looks. They are trying to decide for you what he is based on how he looks, instead of listening to the family who knew him best, who was saying Polly was a gay male who had feminine features. If anything, I would classify, if you gotta classify anybody, I mean, really, I would say, and his family has said this too, if anything, he is what do they call it? Non-binary. He did not care if you called him a girl or boy. And I would have personally called him effeminate gay, which, honestly, they're cool. They're the coolest people. I swear they are. They love to go shopping. Polly had a purse. He liked to do his nails. Yeah, but he wasn't a girl. He said, I'm a boy. But if people wanted to call him a girl, he was like, whatever. The family's got a problem with the fact that that's all they talk about. So if you have time, go watch the video. I gotta go. And I will see you all later. All right.